Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to The Black Tower Show. I am your host, Nathan Ford. Jake Fox is here. We're in BC Studios, broadcasting 1310 WRSB. Brockport, Canandaigua, Rochester, Buffalo, upstate New York. And we all survived the Arctic chill that took us, by real surprise. When your car is actually frozen to the ground. And it's so gray out there, Jake. I don't want to start with a negative thing here, but.
Well, we've kind of bounced back from the Arctic chill, and now it's kind of almost springtime now.
After negative 50, everything is, it's so much better. But it's an honor to have Jay Weidner on the show. Okay, we're huge fans. You need to know who this guy is if you don't already. He's requested, after we had Cliff High on the show, and the ratings were high, people say, you got to check out Jay Weidner, and the man is awesome. Jay Weidner is a renowned author, filmmaker, and Hermetic scholar, considered to be a modern-day Indiana Jones for his ongoing worldwide quest to find clues to mankind's spiritual destiny via ancient societies and artifacts, and we're going to talk about the Nagamati. We're going to talk about that. That's going to be cool. Jay was featured in the History Channel's documentary, The Lost Book of Nostradamus. Jay Weidner, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
I've always suspected that there was a ruling class of psychopathic people. I've always kind of felt it. And I wonder sometimes as I talk to my friends and my family about this kind of anxiousness that seems pervasive at this time. It's difficult to explain. You wonder if it has to do with this group of people that you call Archons. I was wondering if we can start this off with, who are the Archons?
Well, it's seems to be the million-dollar question. A lot of many of the top researchers right now, David Icke and myself and John Lash and Soren Dreyer and a lot of others, have gone through a kind of evolution. It's been kind of interesting to watch. The internet allows us to watch all this now. We used to not be able to see it because everyone was within their own closed universe, but now the universe is wide open, so we can kind of watch people's thought processes and their evolution. And so, the question was 10 years ago, the question was more or less, okay, these guys are psychopaths because they're killing themselves with us at the same time, so that's proof that they're psychopaths and they don't really understand what they're doing. But then it kind of, when you start realizing that actually psychopaths don't like to kill themselves, they want to stay alive, they don't care if you die or not, but they are narcissists enough to not want to die in any way. So then you can see the evolution of thought changing to, well, why would they do things like drop depleted uranium on people that spreads with the wind? Why would they do things like the Gulf oil spill or the Fukishima or GMOs and all these things that are going on? Why would they do things that damage them and their own children? And at that point, the illogic of the answer begets the Archons. So the answer then, I befuddled by this dilemma, went looking, and eventually I found the book. I'd heard of Archons, but I'd never really got a clear definition of them until I got John Lash's book, Not in His Image, which I highly recommend. And in that book, the secret revealed itself, in which there was the Nag Hammadi text, 2,100 years old, found in Egypt in 1945. They have a chapter called The Hypostasis of the Archons. And in that chapter, which is a must-read for everybody, you can get it on the internet, we find out that the ancient peoples, 2,100 years ago and before, thought that the earth was being invaded by a spiritual, alien, off-planet parasite, and they called them the Archons, which is Greek for rulers, by the way, and that this was an alien group who was living off of our energy. And since they were incapable being human, everything they did and do is fake. It's fake culture, fake music, fake food, fake, everything is fake because they have no authenticity. And
it's fake
they are
because
jealous
they
of
don't
art.
have. It's fake because they don't have the ability to create honest work because they're unable to have compassion or empathy for other people. So the stuff that they're producing isn't real. Is that what you mean by
You got it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like, okay, what's the difference between a psychopath, which I consider Archons are psychopaths are Archons?
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between a psychopath and a regular human being? And a psychiatrist would tell you, well, a psychopath cannot empathize, has no ability to empathize. Everything they do, every feeling that they exhibit is one that is like a chameleon. They picked it up from the people around them. They're not real. Mm-hmm. So when they grimace or when they smile or whatever, it's all a facsimile. So if what makes us human is the ability to empathize, which is exactly what makes us human, and these creatures, by psychiatric definition, do not have the ability to empathize. That's the number one difference between us. And I can conclude psychopaths, i.e. Archons, are not humans.
I wonder
That's
if
the way it is.
I wonder if would you say that people can be changed into a psychopath? Can somebody by being the TV in the house, by the way, in this constant stream of death and sex, it's like a parade of blood. When you turn on that TV, it's so horrible, and you wonder, can somebody become psychopathic? Can they start to lose touch of what it means to be an honest human being?
Oh yeah, it's contagious actually. So what happens is that you will have an encounter. If you haven't had an encounter with a psychopath, then you should count your blessings. But let's say you have, and I have. So you encounter a psychopath. Well, there's two reactions to an encounter with a psychopath. The first reaction is deer in the headlights, mouth hanging open, with you thinking, WTF, happened just now, right? And then you kind of walk away a little bit ashamed maybe that you allowed yourself to be so compromised by somebody. That's one reaction. But there's another reaction. The other reaction is, damn, that was really smart the way that guy took advantage of me. I can take advantage of people in that same way. In other words, it's a learned behavior, and it's contagious. So the psychopathic Germans, put the Jews in concentration camps and all the rest, and then they created psychopathic Israelis who are now doing the same thing to the Palestinians, who will turn them into psychopaths. Yeah,
it's funny because on the show we talk a lot about how this system, free enterprise to some degree, makes people psychopathic. And you're kind of changing it and flipping it around and saying, well, these are people, these Archons that existed before the system, that they are creating the system. We talk a lot about
exactly
the system is kind of giving birth to, but you see it the other way around. Very interesting.
Yeah, I say that the Archons created the system.
Sure.
That we were very, very happy hunter-gatherers. If you want to understand how incredibly deep hunter-gatherers were, read the book Voices of the First Day by Robert Lawler. They were incredibly advanced. They were eating incredibly good food, game and wild vegetables and fruits, and living incredibly too close to the earth life. And then they started being gathered into cities about 6,000 years ago in Mesopotamia by Sargon the Great, who started cities, and which were really just centers of slavery in a way. And so people were then taken out of the hunter-gatherer situation and brought in as slaves to the Archon rulers, and we were taken off our good diet and put onto a mostly grain diet, and which keeps you docile. And we were stupefied and dumbified, and here we are.
It's funny because
they've been at it for years.
Yeah. At some point, we made a decision that we would hold people accountable for our actions. It kind of seems that naturally, to settle disputes, we had to nominate somebody, and there begins the construction of a civilization, a government, and then politics play into that. And
and
I mean, I'm just
the
saying
judges are the Archons.
Right, I think, but it was the people initially, maybe, a theory would be the people that we asked them to be that way at some point, that we needed people to say that, to uphold the law and say, well, this is my land and I need somebody to punish that person if that person is coming into my land and taking my things. At that point, we began to nominate people and have people hold accountable. And those people, it seems now to this day, are these psychopathic people, who are acting in that way.
Because the system is set up so that a psychopath can succeed.
Yeah.
That's my argument. My argument is the most psychopathic banker is going to be the most successful. The most psychopathic football player is going to be the most successful. The most psychopathic corporate leader is going to be the most successful. In other words, the entire system is set up to reward those who will be ruthless and do anything to achieve their goal.
That's what virtue is now,
so
is doing anything. Doing anything for money.
The system was made by them. We are living in an artificially contrived system, which ultimately will not only kill us, but kill the planet.
We're talking to Jay Weidner on the Black Tower Show. Jay Weidner, renowned author, filmmaker, Hermetic scholar, and I want you to go a little more in depth into the Nag Hammadi, what that story is. And there's a lot. I mean, it's quite a large collection of texts. By the way, this is not something that is just one small sort of thing. This is like and tells a story. Can you go a little bit in depth there and what that story is talking about?
Yeah, the main thing to remember about the Nag Hammadi is that it hasn't been censored. So, the Bible's been censored, and all the historical writings have been censored by popes and kings and Caesars. And lo and behold, at the close of World War II, we have a little gift from 2,100 years ago, which is been translated and is not censored. So we can actually find out what people back then really thought, and not what the Archons or the rulers want us to think that they thought. And when we read the Nag Hammadi, we find very advanced people who are more spiritually advanced than we are, for sure. And they're Gnostics. They believe in the pursuit of knowledge. That they believe that enlightenment can only come through the pursuit of knowledge. Gnostic means knowledge. It's Greek for knowledge, just like Archon is Greek for ruler. By the way, anarchist is Greek for against the Archons. That's what anarchist directly translates to.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it is. And this is why libertarianism, by the way, is what scares the Archons more than any other thing politically. Because libertarianism is nothing more than anarchism disguised as a political philosophy. So they want to make sure that the libertarian anarchists never succeed, because the real goal of them is to get rid of the Archon. But anyway, the Nag Hammadi is an amazing text, because what it does is, more than anything else, it teaches you how bloody intelligent these people were back then, and how inquisitive they were, and how pretty advanced they were spiritually. And so when you read the Nag Hammadi, you're so struck by the intellectual ability of the people who are writing it. By the time you do get to the hypostasis of the Archons, you're pretty much in complete agreement with everything you're reading, and then, you realize at that point, holy smokes, this Archon thing really does explain a lot of the problems that we're facing.
Yeah. And can you explain how this, so this represents actual ruling elite, a lot of them. It's not all of them, but I mean, who are these people, the ruling elite? Can we put some faces to the names? I mean, the Koch brothers come to mind. I mean, I don't know.
Basically, it's a group that is united by their bloodline. They believe that they have the blood that's closer to superior beings that have been on Earth before, and so they believe that they're superior, and they're in control of corporations and the banks and just about anything of importance. The media, they own the judges, they own the police, they own everything. The Supreme Court, the United Nations. They set it up, so of course they own it, and they seek to. What we have to do, apparently part of the game, is they have to tell us everything that they're doing, right up in our face, and we have to agree to be ruled by them. It's not like you can be taken and be made into a slave against your will. You have to be made into a slave by agreeing that they are your master. Somehow that's part of this game, and I don't, quite understand it. But they have to tell you what they're doing, whether it's the Denver airport or the Georgia Guidestones or whatever. They have to tell you what they're doing. They're blatantly telling you what they're doing in those last two examples, and then you have to say, okay, I agree to be ruled by you. And we're really close to that last part.
Jay Weidner on the Black Tower Show.
Hey Jay, I'd like to hear your take on the white giant conspiracy. What is all of that about? Are they involved in the secret space program?
Whites?
Yeah, the tall whites.
The tall whites. Well, what's interesting about the tall whites is that the Canadian Ministry of Defense, whose first name is Paul, I forget his last name, he's running around right now talking about the tall whites, especially tall whites. And of all of my research and talking to alphabet agencies and things like that, the one thing that I did come away with was that there were these tall whites, sometimes called the Nordics, sometimes called the crypto-terrestrials. There's various names for them, but they've been reported all over the place. People have different descriptions of them, but basically they're the same description of somewhere between upper 6 foot to 8 feet tall, high cheekbones, slanted eyes, thin lips and small nose, and they're telepathic, supposedly. And Charles Martin Smith, I think his name is, he's written 4 books about his encounters with the tall whites in Nevada in the early 60s when he was stationed at an Air Force base there, and he was working for the Air Force. And that then became Area 53, I think, which is just south of Area 51. And I believe that these tall whites have been with us for at least 70,000 to 120,000 years, at least, living on our planet. They're the ones that we call the gods. They're the Greek gods are. They're also the Indian gods. They ride their Vimianas or their ships around, and basically they're not. I don't know if they're off planet or they're another human species that evolved here somehow, coexisting with us. I suspect that they were humans who left Earth and then came back because of the talking about them in the Purana texts, which are the ancient texts from India. They talk about these guys and how they left and went to Mars for a really long time, and I believe, and then they came back, and I believe that's who these people are. They got taller because of the less gravity. They lost the pigment in their skin because of the least amount of sunlight there, and maybe they genetically experimented on themselves, or maybe they're aliens. I don't know. But I believe they're here, and I believe they're still here. And I believe that they are the ones who are directing things from behind the scenes.
So you're saying that they have some sort of relationship with the ruling factions on Earth?
I do, and I think that the ruling factions on Earth, the bloodline, as David Icke would call them, the reason that they call it the bloodline is because they have that tall white crypto-terrestrial blood in them. And the more of that blood you have in you, the higher up the chain you go. It may also be, maybe even have a higher IQ because of having this kind of blood in you. And, and I think that like say the Rothschilds, they really tried to marry in to families that have that look, that tall white look. So did the Windsors, for instance. Charles married Diana, who has a tall white look. She's real tall. She's got the high cheekbones. She's got the blue eyes, pale skin, and these tall whites, their progeny have a kind of a magic about them. So when you can tell when they get up there and become famous, they just have this magic about them, like Princess Diana had, and so the Windsors married, the bloodline that was the closest appearing to tall whites, because they were not legitimate. They had no tall white blood in them, but now they do. So now Harry, or whatever his name is, William, he looks like he's setting himself up to become like king of the world.
Talking to Jay Weidner on the Black Tower Show. Your documentary, Kubrick's Odyssey, you go into some of the hidden messages that are in Kubrick's films. And one interesting thing that you talk about is the connection between 2001, The Shining, and Eyes Wide Shut, kind of describing sort of Kubrick's message encoded in there. Can you go into that a little bit?
Well, I think, the Nag Hammadi, were found in 1945, and they created quite a big stir at the time. And translations started trickling out in the early 50s. And I believe that Arthur C. Clarke got a hold of one of the early translations and based Childhood's End, his classic novel of 1953, on the whole Archon thing. Overlord is a very close translation to Archon. The overlords take over the world, they destroy all the world's religions, and then they transform the human race into something else, not human. And that's the end of the book. And I believe that Kubrick was also interested in all this. I believe that 2001 was really his attempt to make Childhood's End into a movie, and he didn't have the budget or the special effects, so he had to kind of go his own way. And again, we're talking about the Archons here. So what's funny about it is the exact line of thinking that Kubrick displays through his films on the Archons is exactly the line of thinking that kind of the conspiracy world has gone. So the first time that we encounter the Archons in a Kubrick film was in 2001, and they're the off-planet entities that plant the black monolith on the Earth and trap the astronaut at the end in the room, and you can hear them laughing at him on the soundtrack and everything. So the first time we meet the Archons in the work of Kubrick, he posits at that point that they're off-planet entities. Okay, take that. They're off-planet entities. So then, we flash forward 11 years or 12 years, and we get The Shining, and this is our second encounter with Kubrick's Archons, but this time they're not off-planet necessarily, they're demonic. They're spiritual forces that can enter into you and turn you into such a madman that you'd want to kill your own son. Okay. Then the third time that and this is also how we went in the conspiracy world. Oh, they're off planet. Oh, they also seem to have a demonic part to them. Yes, they do. And now the last time that Kubrick approaches the Archons, it's in Eyes Wide Shut. And now they're humans, they're rulers, and they're psychopathic perverts, and in a secret society. And that's exactly where the conspiracy world, David Icke and John Lash and me and a lot of other people, that's exactly the arc we took ourselves. We went off-planet, demonic, secret societies. And now that's where we're stuck, just like Kubrick ended it. We now believe that the Archons... Let me do I have time to read a little small quote for you?
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
This is from the Emerald Tablet by Hermes Trismegistus, right?
Okay.
I'll read this, a little short passage. In the form of man they walk among us, but only to sight were they as our men. Serpent-headed when the glamour was lifted, but appearing to man as men among men. Crept they into the councils, taking form that were like unto men, slaying by their arts the chiefs of the kingdoms, taking their form and ruling over man. Only by magic can they be discovered. Only by sound can their faces be seen. Sought they from the kingdom of shadows to destroy man and to rule in his place.
Wow.
That was written about 3,000 years ago.
So are we talking about the Archons? Is it like a spirit that is kind of passed on through the generations? This is it actual, because it's the people are embodying a sort of spirit. We're not able.
Psychopathic gene. Are you
it's
saying?
a psychopathic seems to be like a spirit that enters the people. You know, when Kubrick was, he actually put a face.
Well, that's actually right.
Yeah.
When you're weak, okay, when Jack Nicholson is weak, when he wants to have a drink, when he can no longer handle the stress, now he can see them. Now they come in. You see, you let them in. You give them permission to come in, and you also give them permission to leave. And so Jack Nicholson, as he descends into his surrender to the archonic forces, he begins, his murderous rampage, and that's exactly right. He is no longer Jack Nicholson; he is the Archon.
Mm. You're talking
so they
about,
get in there, and
you're talking about a group of people. I mean, we're talking about like a legend that compares to the vampire legend. I mean,
that's where the vampires came from.
Really,
the vampires came from this legend. Remember, these tall whites can't go out in the daytime. They have some problem with the sun. They can only go out at night. If they go out in the daytime, they have to wear big hats and long sleeve shirts and gloves and sunglasses and so they come out and they're seen at night. I mean, you can see them in Vegas. They like to go to Vegas for some reason, and you can see them walking around. I've seen them at the Denver airport 3 years ago. I saw one. So they're here, and they're very strange looking. And for sure, if you were in a bar or something and you started talking to one of these creatures, you would really truly believe they were vampires.
You saw one at the airport, yeah. This is like
yeah. I actually had a 5 hour layover at Denver Airport to October 2011. October 2011. I had a 5 hour layover. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have any book. So what I did was I sat by the rolling sidewalk that they have there, which stretches about 2 miles. And I sat at the very end where everybody has to shuffle in. I would say probably 80,000 people passed me in that 5 hours. And I was looking at every one of them, trying to see if I could identify one, because I heard they like to go through Denver Airport. And I saw a woman coming down the aisle at me. She was about 6'3". She could not see any skin on her except around her nose and her lips, and that looked weird. And obviously had a wig on. And I stood up, and I had my cell phone camera, and I didn't want to look obvious, right? So, but I saw her. I got shocked by her, and she saw that I saw her, and she began turning. As she came by me on the rolling sidewalk, she turned her shoulder and back to me, as I was trying to take a picture, of course, and then kind of eased her body so that her back was always facing me as she went around me. So I never got to see her outside of maybe 15, 20 feet away. But that was her. I mean, that was one of them. I mean, there was no doubt.
Wow.
And other people have seen them. They're like. I had a friend who was working in a 7-Eleven 30 years ago, and he said one night at like midnight, this woman walked in and bought like a Coke or something, and that she had gloves on, and that he looked and in between the sleeve and the glove, he saw her skin, and he said it was like paper white. He'd never seen anything like it. He said it was obvious she had, makeup on her face to hide, the white skin.
This is some Jacob's Ladder type of stuff going on right now, man. I don't know. This is, I mean, the thing is that I can only take it back to like a personal thing, And I sense something, me and Jake talk about it a lot on the show, that there is sort of an anxiousness, and people are sensing something very, very wrong. And what they're being fed, what they're being fed on the TV, I mean, I don't want to keep bringing it back to the television, but man, the stuff is powerful stuff, man. And I think we kind of underestimate how that does affect people. I can't stress it enough.
Oh, I think I totally agree with you, man. I quit watching TV years ago, and I went to a conference in 2012, July, the Conspiracy Con, and I had a hotel room, and so I just decided I'd lay down and see what was on TV. I watched about 10 minutes of television, almost had a heart attack. I could not believe what I was watching. And then I realized that people are pumping that crap into their heads all day long. Are you kidding?
There was a show.
It's like a perfect Archon trap.
I gotta just say, there was a show. I turned on the TV, and it was called, I kid you not, I Want to Kill My Teenage Daughter. That was the name of the show. No joke. And it literally, I had like a moment, man. I had kind of a moment there. I was like, I gotta change. But what do you do, right? You got to change your life, right? And I think when you start to become more aware, it's difficult because you realize you have to change things, and that might mean getting rid of certain people around, not getting rid of people around you, but sort of, changing your own ways. People will drop in and out of your life, and it is a little bit of a sacrifice. But what do you tell people when they come to you and they want to know, what is the sort of truthful way for me to live? How do I begin on this journey,
Well, I mean, the thing is that people have to learn to listen to their heart. It's telling you a lot. Intuition is a great guide, especially in these crazy times. So, you hear somebody talking to you, and ask yourself, does this guy sound believable? Does he sound sincere and authentic? And judge it from that. Forget the facts. Listen to authenticity in it, and you can tell. And I can barely stand to hear any politician talk at all now. Because all I hear is just contrived lies inside the web of the words they're using. And, I'm ready for a revolution. I mean, I'm like, okay, let's overthrow this sucker, and let's do it now. And because if we don't do something soon, we're going to all die. And I don't mean we're all going to die anyway, but we're all going to die, like, immediately. And it's going to be that weird and sudden. We don't know what's going on in Fukishima. The Archon press won't tell us. Nobody will tell us really what's going on. So that must mean it's really bad. Otherwise, they would tell us. And so, we have to create a non-Archon society. A society that isn't based on, who has the most hits on Google, or who, song is the most popular, or who has the most money in their bank account. We have to go back to human values. Like, how many friends do you have, and are they really good friends? And how many people will come to your help when you're down and out? And do you have people like that? Because that's real wealth.
Sure.
And we've kind of lost our understanding of what being wealthy really is. And that's the Archons. And I don't want to harp on the Archons too much, because a lot of it's our fault for succumbing to them. But at the same time, they put you in a situation where, you open up door number 1 and there's a guy with a shotgun, and you open up door number 2 and there's a guy with a machete. I mean, you have no choice. You have to open up one of the doors, and you're going to get it either way. So it's like they set that up. We've got to say, no, I'm not opening up any doors. I'm not playing that game anymore. Yeah. That's kind of how we have to be.
All right. Amen. Jay Weidner on the Black Tower Show.
What's your take on Fukushima, Jay, and all the weird circumstances that surrounded it?
Well, my feeling is that TEPCO is ruled by the Japanese Yakuza, which is their mafia, and the mafia, as in their country, as in our country, their number one thing that they control is the construction industry. And I think that they cut corners when they built Fukushima. When the the earthquake came and slammed into it. They had incredible structural failures. They aren't going to allow anyone to come in, because if they come in, they're going to see the structural failures. They're going to blame TEPCO, and then and they can't let that happen because it's the Yakuza. So I think we have a perfect example here of why you never want organized crime to run anything. And they're never going to let anyone in because of that fact. So our goose is cooked. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Unless the United Nations or somebody steps in and says, you're out of here, we're coming in, we're taking over this cleanup project, I don't know what's going to happen. Right now, they're killing the Pacific. And there are hundreds of thousands of gallons of water running over these hot particles every day, and they're running right out into the ocean. They can't even use concrete anymore. If they had just concreted the whole thing in when it happened, just laid literally tons and tons of concrete over the entire thing, like they did at Chernobyl, and at least they would have suppressed it. But they put so much water on the ground now that the water is separating the earth, and they can't use any more concrete. So it's like they screwed themselves, they screwed us, and it's a perfect example of what is the point of the United Nations. If you have the United Nations, then they have no power to even help with a situation like this. So what's the point? You know?
Jay Weidner, our guest on the Black Tower Show. There's a few other topics I want to get your take on. One is, it just came out that Rochester is the 5th poorest city in the United States, and it has a high concentration of poor people. So the poor people are in certain areas. And, we're out in the community, we're talking to people about how they begin their steps to, find themselves, find out what a pure way to live is. And you realize just how illusioned people are and how far away they are from understanding a lot of the things that we're talking about. But if you had to tell people one thing to get onto a path, one thing that they could do to begin this journey that we're talking about of uncovering the truth, kind of seeing that there are these forces at work, psychopathic, many of them, what would you tell people?
Well,
especially people that are struggling too, and these people don't have a lot of food and things.
Yeah,
like that.
I'm more concerned with them actually, because that's reality. I would say that now is the time. Right before he died, Kurt Vonnegut gave an interview, and in the interview he said something that was just really hilarious. He said, "Mr. Vonnegut, at your ripe old age of 89, do you have any advice to give to young people today?" And he said, "Yeah, join a gang." Now, that's a funny line, but it's actually got a lot of truth to it. And I'm not saying I want you to join the Crips and the Bloods and go out and kill people. That's not what I mean. I'm pretty sure it's not what Kurt meant. What I mean and what he means is, you guys, you're weak when you're alone. There's only strength in numbers. Now, you can have a gang that plants community gardens and grow your own food. You've got to start thinking about taking care of business locally. Nobody's coming to help you. No, Jesus isn't coming. Obama's not coming. The aliens aren't coming. The New World Order's not coming. Nobody's coming to help us. It is now up to us to take care of ourselves. And we need to start by physically taking care of ourselves, A, and then B, spiritually taking care of ourselves. What does that part mean? That part means that you got to be aware. You got to go to the websites that tell you real information. Go to websites like rents.com if you want to find out what's really going on. Open your eyes and read the stories. Don't hide from it. Read it. Face up to it. And then accept everything as being real. And then when it proves unreal, you can cancel it off your list. But at this point in the game, you have to be frosty, awake, and aware, and assume that everything that you hear is probably real. And then you move on from there. That's what has to be done. And, you've got to wake up. That's the first step. And if you think you're awake, but you're questioning a lot of the things that I'm saying, you're probably not awake. And when I say wake up, I mean it's hard. And you will lose your friends, you'll lose your wives, you might even lose your children because they'll think you're crazy. But once you're awake, you can't go back. And I've never met anyone who took the red pill that didn't appreciate it in the end. Yeah, they lost all their heroes. Yeah, they lost their wife. Yeah, they lost their family and friends. But in the end, they're much happier that they took the red pill and didn't stay stupid.
Makes me think of Carlos Castaneda for some reason, those books that were kind of influential to me. And, you know, the idea that Don Juan would prescribe, you know, living in a boarded up house somewhere, you know, getting rid of your possessions and things. And that seems to be a common sort of motif about reaching things, is that you don't need things to begin with.
Well, you don't.
And getting rid of that and getting rid of that connection. But one other take we wanted to get, and we've had guests on the show that have talked a lot about an organized international child sex ring, which is something that our show, we want to talk about it. There's schools in Canada that they're uncovering mass graves, these sort of things, these stories that are coming out and have been going on seemingly for a while. I wanted to get your take on what you thought about that. And also it kind of makes me think about Eyes Wide Shut and about sort of the things that you would see in there about the exploitation and the using of people, the using up of people. I wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, I think that actually at the very core of the New World Order is a child sex ring. And I think that it is used both because they like that, and two, it's a way to compromise everybody by filming them doing this. And it's well known that the CIA set up safe houses all over the United States in every major city in the 50s and early 60s, and then they would take politicians and cops and judges into these places, give them whatever sexual proclivity they wanted, and then film it. And then, of course, you know, show them the film later and say, you know, you ever get out of line, your wife's going to really like to see this. And so this is how they control us. Now, we know that Jimmy Savile, the disc jockey for Top of the Pops in England, he wrote a letter to St. Charles, or Prince Charles wrote a letter to Jimmy Savile and said in the letter, your country will never know what you really did for them. And you wonder what that means, and I don't think it takes a big enough imagination to figure out why he's thanking Jimmy Savile, and two, why Jimmy Savile attended the Queen's Christmas parties every year. And so we begin to see, we go to Sandusky in Pennsylvania, the Penn State University scandal, and again we see the intimate idea that he's providing boys to elites and alumni, and it just looks like that's what's going on.
Why, without getting too psychological, is it children? Is it about this cardinal sin? And I wonder about it, why it is that you said about framing people. Obviously, that is huge. That is a huge tactic to get these people filmed and use that against them. But I wonder why the children, why they're in there.
Because they're sexually titillated by the destruction of innocence. In other words, it's not the sex act that gets them off. It's the idea that they're removing the innocence from this person. I have an article on jweidner.com called Murdered Innocence, the real story of the murder of Joan Benet Ramsey. And, I was told by the head investigator of the Ramsey case that, that article busted the case wide open, that they knew that was what really happened there, but they couldn't do anything about it. And again, it's a pedo ring operating across the United States that Joan Benet was part of. And so we have this idea that there are men, mostly men, who get off on turning a little innocent, sweet girl into a cold, calculating monster.
I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We'd love to have you back on the show. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Take care.
What the hell was that? That got weird, man. Are we being fucked with by the New World Order? Are you a little scared?